First, you must realize that you have no idea before you can know the idea. We scan across all the frequencies if we want to learn anything new. Let us begin.
What has physics done for me lately?
Furthermore, the equation E is equal mc squared.
We have now acquired a fateful power to alter and to destroy nature.
That's like when you're in physics and you go to Dreamworld saying, oh, this is a physics excursion.
Science. What is it all about?
The whole of human history all falls in the dust of one stroke of the nail file. You can't really get to grips with evolution unless you realise what an enormous amount of time.
Our own planet is only a tiny part of the vast cosmic tapestry, a starry fabric of worlds yet untold.
You're tuned into what can only be described as the best radio station on this blue dot we call Earth. It is, of course, 4ZZZ, connecting and amplifying voices of our community, be it on your conventional wireless radio by tuning into the classic frequency of 102.1 FM, digital devices such as DAB or smart speaker, listening via the Community Radio Plus app while you're at the gym. Hey Gabe, streaming us live from our sensational website at 4zzz.org.au. And of course, you can always listen back to us or any 4ZZZ show for that matter using the ingenious on-demand feature also found at that URL.
I love it when you riff on your bit, Max.
We also now have a weekly podcast of the show for your listening pleasure, created, that'd be good, by Toby. A condensed version of the show without the music, which my mum prefers. Just search for our show name, which is, of course, No Idea, spelt with a K, your weekly dose of science. And joining me today, you're going to love this, to deliver some gold standard science are two of my favourite.
Don't put the bar too high. Let's keep that bar medium.
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Max.
Gabe.
Better to promise little and deliver a little bit more than
Under
that.
promise, over.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Under promise, under deliver. That's
Well,
what we're
just
here
deliver.
to do. Under promise, deliver.
And Max, you forgot to mention that it's exactly 1 week out until you do the entire show intro and that introduction that you read out a cappella without a script.
Oh,
Yeah.
do I have to learn
Let's see
it?
what you can do. Well, if I have, I feel like you can.
I'm a bit concerned now, but that's all right.
Now, I'm going to go into a little bit on what happened in Mount Etna in Italy
Oh,
with
I'm
the
excited about
volcanic
that.
eruption
Yeah,
and
that's
why that
cool.
happens. And I mean, I was about to say why people go climbing the mountain. We know why. People are a bit dumb, but we do
And
silly
mountains
things.
are cool, and volcanoes don't always erupt. I used to live in a volcano.
It's an active volcano. They knew that going in.
My volcano was active.
We've also got the latest in tickling science.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah.
And we'll have to get into Max. Did an F1 world champion deliberately crash into another driver during a race over the weekend?
Yes,
the kids
that's another
watching
science.
on. Yeah, that's right.
And
there
Max,
with the other science.
You ready?
Why did you laugh?
I'm just a half glass full sort of person, Peter.
You only laughed at me and not Gabe. It's not funny that I'm here. Anyway, I'm here to keep the giggles going today. Everybody put your hands up.
Cool. How high?
Ugh,
I got my
didn't happen.
lighter. Am I allowed to use a lighter in the studio or not?
Not what we're doing today.
we've never been told no. And I'd like to operate on the assumption that everything is allowed in the 4ZZZ studios unless we're told not.
That's right.
Water, not on. Lighter,
Food? Yeah.
never heard anything.
All right. Now, why is Gabe laughing? It should have been because I tickled him.
Oh, okay.
I was stitched up.
Yeah, he was mean about this and he refused to be tickled.
A
and
rib
didn't
tickler.
laugh.
Nice.
But I can't tickle you, Max, because you're a bit too far away. But who do you think's the most ticklish here?
Oh, I put myself forward.
Yeah, I reckon Gabe.
Gabe's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. You're
There's
too
not, there's
disciplined,
not
Peter.
much fortitude going on here.
I'm very disciplined. Honestly, I can be a stone wall if I need to. I learned from an early age. I was very small as a person, so people would always try and go, and I was like, no.
Yeah, that's right.
So there you go. But who knows why we're ticklish? Do you know why we're ticklish?
Why we're
We're
ticklish?
ticklish. Max, do you know why we're ticklish?
It must be our nerve endings in the skin.
Yeah.
And you're you're sensing it, you're seeing it happen, and you're waiting for the touch to happen. I don't know. Yeah.
But why
Sort
does
of
it make you
feels like
laugh?
oversensitivity,
Yes,
right? Like
yeah.
almost, and preparing for it and expecting it
Yeah.
amps it up as like a sensation you want to avoid because it feels like your nerves are getting
You're not in control.
overfired.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Right. Well, you two might be the first to have a theory. You're not the first to have a theory. We don't know if it's
No
right.
one's thought about this before, mate. We've never
the
cracked
point. That's
open
not
this
the point.
Pandora's
Let's
box.
move on to the sneezing and the sun.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's right.
The point is that literally no one knows why we're ticklish and what tickling is. No one knows. We've been wondering about this for 2,000 years and we still have no clue.
Okay.
From
What was happening before?
I just didn't care.
Ancient Egypt, someone tickles and like, well, I'm not going to worry about it for another 1,000 years.
We'll just put that in the back burner.
They had bigger things to worry about in ancient Egypt. Ancient Greece, however, Socrates was very interested.
Okay. We've got some
Living the life,
pyramids
he
to
was like,
build.
"What
Let's
is
go. Yeah.
So this comes to us from neuroscientist Konstantina Kilteni from, I'm going to read this as Radboud University. I don't know how it's
Radboud.
actually meant to be pronounced, but Radboud University in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
What is the QS ranking
Netherlands.
of Radboud?
It doesn't have one. It doesn't have
I reckon
one.
300.
Yeah.
Oh, you're pretty close, Gabe. It's 272.
Oh.
Radboud.
Job done.
So she thinks that it's time that we take tickling research seriously. So let's be serious, guys. I mean, come on.
Bring it down.
Be serious. And that's because tickling is a uniquely complex phenomenon. It's a complex interplay of motor control, sensory processing, social interaction, emotional response, and brain development, which Gabe was getting into. So you're on the right track there, according to Konstantina. So here's something I thought was really interesting. There's actually no scientific definition, or at least a clear one, of what tickling actually is. Is it feather-light touch? Probably not, because there is also a thing called feather-light touch. Or is it that intense stimulation, like when someone tickles you on your feet or your underarms or whatever, like what we do with kids, that makes them go like, ha, 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 ha. Like that is different to when you're just like lightly touching someone. And so most studies have actually focused on the light touch, while intense social tickling is much less explored. So the lack of consistent methods and definitions has also held back serious research. So Kilteni has decided to start doing controlled, reproducible tickling experiments. And she's developed a mechanized, standardized tickling system.
Okay.
She's bringing rigor and reproducibility to the field.
Okay.
Gabe, we told you this was serious, please.
Yes.
This will allow researchers to run real experiments with clear, comparable results and not just rely on anecdotes or informal observations, which is what we're doing currently. So this is her tickle lab setup, which, good God, who wants to go in there? But essentially, it's a chair with a plate containing 2 holes. You insert your feet.
Chair with a plate containing 2 holes.
You insert your feet through the holes and expose the bottom of your feet.
Oh, no.
This is
Locked
not
in.
good.
Locked in.
Yeah, okay.
And then a mechanical stick
Yeah, I thought so.
precisely and consistently tickles the soles of your feet. Gabe is wriggling uncontrollably right now.
I hate this.
You feel like you're in pain.
It's a bad image, isn't it? I'm getting
And
a bad image.
This allows standardized, repeatable stimulation, addressing a major limitation in past tickling studies where one person's tickle can't be replicated exactly on another person. But this is a robot, so we can do it the same. And so while participants are tickled, the lab measures brain activity, presumably through EEG, and physiological responses like your heart rate, Gabe's is high right now, sweating, can't tell, breathing, probably pretty fast, hey Gabe, and then laughter or vocal reactions, squealing or screaming. I just feel like you walked into this lady's lab and someone's locked in by the ankles and they're screaming their head off. You'd be like, getting funded for this? What the hell? So this is why it matters, because obviously that seems ridiculous, but she, like many others, are saying that we do need to take this seriously, and that's because we don't understand it. It's a really weird thing. So, did you know you can't tickle yourself?
Yes.
And they don't entirely know why we can't tickle ourselves.
Yeah.
There's a hypothesis that it's because your brain predicts your own movements.
Right.
And that then it
Which is the
suppresses
anticipation we were
response.
talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's no proof of that. No one's ever really looked into it. It's just like, oh, maybe it's because we know it's happening. So they want to look into that, and then they think that if we do look into that, it could shed light on sensory motor prediction, which is critical in conditions like schizophrenia, where that prediction may be impaired. Lots of actual real life implications
I
of this.
feel like someone listening has a story of successfully tickling themselves. Like we've all tried. Someone must have done it.
Okay, so scientists said you can't do this. They've
can't.
tested that.
Well, you also
and you're
said
like, the
the
only
science is
point.
out
No, the science
on
is out on why, Gabe,
it
not
works.
whether it happens.
I want to hear, have you ever... G-rated answers only. Have you
Yeah.
ever successfully tickled yourself?
I don't want to know about the non-G-rated ones.
0420-626-733.
So then there's also childhood development. Tickling often occurs between parents and children, especially babies, helping build attachment and bonding, we think, which is interesting that parents just naturally tickle their babies and babies will naturally laugh about it. Like, if you think about it critically, it's not that funny, is it? What's funny about
Tickling
it?
your child.
Well, from the child's perspective,
Yeah,
it's
true.
not that funny.
That's right.
So why do we naturally laugh about it? It's real weird. So they think it could offer insights into early neural development and parent-infant communication.
Okay.
This one really got me. So this is something that has been researched. Studies have shown that people with autism spectrum disorder often are more ticklish and find it more intense.
Right.
How on earth did they test that?
Yeah.
Was it just they got some kids in a room and they were like, hey, these ones have autism, these ones don't. Here comes a comically large feather. Everyone put your arms up and just like watch them? Who signs their kid up for that study?
Exactly.
It doesn't say child on here, but
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
It sounds borderline unethical to
Yeah.
me, but interesting. And they want to explore how tickling is processed in the brain, which could show where some differences between people with autism disorder and people without have the different neural pathways, which could obviously help with helping people with ASD live their lives. Then there's also, obviously, the question of evolution. Tickling is not uniquely human. Bonobos, gorillas, and rats are also ticklish.
Crazy.
Really weird. And so it suggests some sort of evolutionary function. There's a
Yeah.
function to
Okay.
it. Maybe
For it
social
to
bonding,
stick around, yeah.
play,
Or
teaching
at least
animals.
potentially a common reason why it's maybe the side effect of something that does have a
Yes.
function.
Yeah, it could be that as well. But they think, that if we can figure out why it evolved, that would be useful. So the answer, all of this is not really science. It's more just acknowledging an absence of science, or what we call a knowledge gap. This is a huge knowledge gap about something that we've known about for thousands of years and been wondering about. We just haven't been wondering professionally. What's the difference between science and mucking around, Gabe?
Writing it down.
Writing it down. That's
Adam
what we haven't been
Savage.
doing. So now Kilkenny at Radbod University are going to be writing it down. I think that's sick.
Cool. Bring up this Gabe.
Max, I've got male frogs in the snowy mountains that are more attractive to female frogs if they're infected with fungus.
Really?
Yep.
So just like humans then.
Just like humans. Exactly right. The crossovers are crazy. So these are whistling tree frogs, they're
Right.
called. The species is found in eastern Victoria, eastern New South Wales, the ACT, and, of course, southeast Queensland.
What?
But there's a subspecies. All good
The
things
rest of
are
them are
found in
really close
southeast Queensland.
together.
Well, no, it's found
Southeast
right up
Queensland's
the eastern seaboard.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Well, it used to be anyway. And then there's a subspecies of them, though, called the Alpine tree frog. And they are only found in parts of Australia's snowy mountains. So a subspecies of the same group, but distinct.
Colder.
And if you see the two, you won't think they're the same species. The generic-looking ones are pretty brown-looking.
ouch.
Yeah,
But the generic species is what I meant to say.
That's
look
mean.
generic, though. They look like a
mean.
generic brown frog. But the
Yeah.
snowy mountains ones, the Alpine tree
Yeah,
frogs,
they're blonde.
very pretty. They're very pretty. Well, they've got a bit of blonde in them, Max.
Yeah.
They almost look like, those little porcelain shiny frog sculptures you see in like antique stores sometimes.
Usually
next
they're
to-
green tree frogs, though, aren't
They
they?
usually, so they look similar to a green tree frog, these ones,
Love those,
broadly.
they're shiny.
About 3.5 centimeters, I think they get. And they have
Oh,
this
it's got
like,
eyeliner. I
they,
see.
they have an eyeline. They're green. And they've got these stripes of, I guess, beigey blonde down their backs and along their sides. Very nice looking frogs. Rate that. Yeah.
Rate that
What do you
frog.
think? Out of 10?
I'm going to give that one a 7.
And they sound a bit like this, Max.
Kind of like a whistle.
That is the whistling tree frog. I don't know if that's the specific subspecies of the alpine ones.
Right.
That recording's from Dr. Jody Rowley at Frog ID, the
We love Frog
founder
ID.
and face of Frog ID.
Frog ID for life.
Absolutely. And so, unfortunately, these frogs have been hit. I did say they used to be quite widespread. They have been hit hard by chytrid fungus.
Depressing.
Do you know about chytrid fungus, Max?
No, I do not. I'm looking
is.
at the article though. Yeah.
One of the worst things that has happened to modern Australian wildlife is
Really?
chytrid fungus and frogs
Oh.
around the world. So
Not humans.
It was detected in the 1990s, and it's had massive impacts in Australia, and it was having impacts before then. That's just when we picked it up. But in Australia alone, it's had declines in 43 frog species from chytrid fungus, high risk of extinction to 6 currently alive frog species, and 7 are already extinct, in part and usually largely because of chytrid fungus.
And did we bring chytrid fungus?
Almost certainly.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Still
it's
our
got unknown confirmed origins, but it did spread around the world quite quickly around the same time. So
Gotcha.
probably human as a vector. And in one of those species that we sent extinct was the gastric brooding frog, which held live young in its mouth.
Oh, I remember that frog.
Raised them. Yeah, which was only went extinct, I think, in the 70s or 80s.
Oh, that's sad.
Early 80s, I think. But since 1980, it's also taken out over 80% of these alpine tree frogs. So they're now only found in isolated locations in the wild, and almost all infected frogs die after their first breeding season. So frog biologists are keen to understand how they reproduce to try and keep them alive.
Keep them going.
Yeah,
Keep
exactly.
doing it.
Which is exactly what some researchers are up to from the University of Melbourne. We got a QS ranking.
Well, they
University of
think they're
Melbourne.
number 1 in Australia, so I'll just say that.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, then they'd probably be 12 or something.
25,
Max.
I reckon. 25.
They are 13th.
Really?
13th
Guys,
worldwide.
get ready.
So University of Melbourne was 33rd in 2023. There was a big period of time in the sort of 2010s and early 2020s when Uni Melb, Uni Queensland, Monash, ANU, and UNSW, I think, were all in that 30 to 60 range. And then in 2024, Uni Melb jumped from 33rd to 14th.
Wow.
And now they're 13th.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I think they can claim the best in Oz based on the QS rankings.
ANU's standing behind them.
They do have
glaring.
a clear head and shoulders above the rest at the moment. But so these researchers, they've done field and lab studies on these alpine tree frogs, collectively studying about a couple hundred of them. Sometimes they're
Incredible
studying
they could
calls.
find that many. Frogs are
So
so
they've got
hard
a bunch
to
in the
find.
lab.
Oh, okay. Fair.
And then they have a bunch in enough in the field that they can do studies as well. They were dealing with quite small sample sizes in the field, like in the dozens each time for each of the different studies. But they were studying the colours of the males. They were studying their calls, their breeding, and their sperm. We'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sure.
What they found was that the male frogs are more attractive to potential mates if they were infected with this usually deadly chytrid fungus. They found
What?
Yeah, so they found the males that are infected produce more colourful displays in their throat patch, which is a signal to attract females, with females preferring the brighter and more vibrant colour displays. Specifically, they found the UV throat colour increased, with the not just increase if they were infected, but the more infected they were, the more their UV colour in their throat increased.
Do you think maybe they could be getting infected on purpose?
Well, no. I will get into why this is happening. They did find that other stuff like the brightness and the yellow-orange chroma of their throat patch was unchanged. So to the human eye, I don't think it changes much. But to a frog eye,
To a frog,
to an
they're like,
alpine tree
hell
frog,
yeah.
that is a colourful looking
That's a
thing.
shiny frog.
You are infected. And they also found that the male frogs infected with the fungus, because they're more attractive, they have 30% more breeding events than uninfected males, meaning they have more offspring, more egg clusters.
But it also means that if they're susceptible to getting the fungus in any way, biologically, they're passing those traits
passing it on more.
Wow,
Yeah.
way more.
Yeah, so...
But they
and
could
then
play
the-
out both ways, though, couldn't it? Like they could build up a resistance to it.
Yeah. So later studies of this sperm that we talked about, of the male frogs, found that...
How do they discern the sperm from the tadpoles? Is just size?
Oh, this is all in the lab.
Okay.
Yeah. This all, the sperm stuff
Who
was all
has
in
to
the
milk
lab.
a frog?
Yeah, I mean, someone from the University of Melbourne. You don't maintain a 13th QS ranking without milking some frog. They found that the sperm of the infected frogs, they produced more of it for a start, and it had higher quality swimmers.
Really?
But this is the little clue of what's going on here. So the infected males are producing more sperm, have more of it. They're more attractive. They're having more breeding events.
Going out with a bang.
Seems counterintuitive, but they think it might be that they're sinking all their energy into reproducing when they get infected.
When they're dying, yeah.
It is a sort of Hail Mary, last-ditch effort
The Last of
to
Us.
reproduce when they know they're infected and are probably not going to survive much longer. So it's a good thing in this funneling of energy into spawning before succumbing to the infection, but it does mean that they're probably not putting much energy into fighting the disease, fighting the fungus infection, and also that they're not having much energy to do other stuff because the population is still really low. And they think this all or nothing investment in reproduction in infected males is just plateauing the population when we need to be seeing it going in the upwards direction. So it's keeping this population on life support. But because they're sinking all their energy into this, because they're very often dying even sooner after because they're sinking all their energy into it, if something else comes along, like a fire or a drought or climate change impacts, yeah, exactly. They could be really badly impacted because they're sinking all this energy into reproducing right now when they're infected and then probably dying not long after that, which means, if a badly timed fire comes through or something, it could be really bad news for these alpine tree frogs. But the researchers, the lead author, Dr. Laura Branley, said, understanding how frogs survive in the wild will help us better manage them and stop them from going extinct. We know breeding is critical for survival, and we can help these frogs by protecting current habitat and creating new breeding habitat. Yeah, you don't say. The reproduction is quite critical for survival. Yeah. But she also says, with our help and their ingenious survival strategy, it is our hope that the beautiful songs of the alpine tree frog will be heard again across all of the Australian Alps.
Right.
Do you know what this reminds me of? So back in the day, when this is a human thing, people used to really romanticize consumption because it made you really pale and frail and skinny.
Oh, as in tuberculosis.
It's TB.
Yeah.
It's TB. Yeah. But if you were pretty, they called it consumption, and really romanticized the hell out of it. They were like, oh, she's got consumption. And to me, that's what these frogs are doing. They're like, ooh, consumption.
He's infected.
Yeah. Similar thing. Don't get consumption, by the way. TB is terrible. TB has ruined the world. But maybe for these frogs, it's a good idea. It's not a good idea, but it might be an idea.
We had Paul text in. He said, I need to go back to when the gastric brooding frog was last seen. Anyone want to join me? So that was the 70s. He wants to go back to the 70s. Is that it?
I think early 80s.
Early 80s.
81 or something like that.
I'm going to be honest, I don't, because I couldn't have a credit card without a husband back then.
Come on.
Personally not, but you guys can go.
Yes,
you guys have a good time. Come back and tell me how it was.
And Pete's looking forward to the Formula One because of all the shenanigans that happened in the Spanish GP. But we'll get to that. Let's get back into the playlist. This one goes out to Issy. It's just simply called 22.
Jeez.
Like a perfect night to dress up like
We heard from Taylor Swift with 22.
Unbelievable.
Yes, you are listening to
Incredible.
I think it's
Max
time.
was barring the doors
Yeah, fully.
It's right.
to keep that song playing.
This is some research leveraging AI to detect bad science in the press. This comes from a workshop presentation at the annual conference of the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence.
Is this play about us?
It was conducted by researchers from Stevens Institute of Technology, which has a QS ranking.
Oh, how's Stephen going?
Yeah.
Stevens Institute. Stephen, I imagine, is a medium scientist, so I'm going to give him 482.
850 to something range.
Yeah.
600.
Izzy's the closest. It's 701 to 710.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll see that.
They demonstrated a new AI architecture developed using open source and free versions of commercial large language models to detect misleading science. Their test data included both human-generated reports drawn either from reputable science journals or low-quality sources known to publish fake news, like us, and AI-generated reports.
Hey, what's the drive-by? That's not right.
And AI-generated reports, of which half were reliable and half contained inaccuracies. Each report was then paired with original research abstracts related to the technical topic, enabling the team to check each report for scientific accuracy. Their work is the first attempt at systematically directing AI to detect inaccuracies in science reporting in public media. The team created 3 architectures to guide the AI through the process of determining a news report's accuracy. One of these architectures used a 3-step approach. First, the AI model summarized each news report and identified the salient features. Next, it conducted sentence-level comparisons between claims made in the summary and evidence contained in the original peer-reviewed research. Finally, the AI made a determination as to whether the report accurately reflected the original research or made specific mistakes, such as oversimplification or confusing causation with correlation,
Oh, the big one.
Yeah.
The big one.
Yeah, which is commonly present, they reckon, in inaccurate news reports. Using the data set, the team's LLM pipelines, that's a large language model, were able to correctly distinguish between reliable and unreliable news reports. With how much accuracy you reckon they were able to determine?
30%.
Is this like overall
Yeah, overall.
accuracy or like the percent that had any mistake in them?
No, just overall. You know, how good were they better than average or were they less than average?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. 60,
Yeah.
70?
Yeah, 75% it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's not bad,
That's
is it?
better than I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than what I did at uni, that's for sure. The forensic
Man, just really bringing down the show, man. Good Lord.
the forensic AI proved markedly better at identifying inaccuracies, this is a good one, in human-generated content than AI-generated reports, which is bad. The reason
It's like, no, I feel like I'm right.
Yeah, I'm going to let that go. The AI wrote that, yeah.
Something like that N dash just seems trustworthy.
They're not entirely clear on why the AI was a bit shit at doing the AI-generated reports, although it's known that non-expert humans similarly struggle to identify technical errors in AI-generated text.
Yes, well, if you're not an expert, it's hard to know what's right. That
You're correct.
seems
And
like
you just got to feel
common
for all the
knowledge, I feel.
teachers, all the teachers and lecturers out there, just with all the students just submitting all the AI stuff. Anyway, ideally, the team's research could open the door to browser plugins that automatically flag inaccurate science content, or to rankings of publishers based on how accurately they cover scientific discoveries. Perhaps most importantly, the research could also enable the creation of large language models that describe scientific information more accurately, that are less prone to confabulating when describing scientific research. The researchers conclude AI is here. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. Studying how AI thinks.
Right, but we can make... Whoa.
who said
There's a
this?
difference between putting the genie back in the bottle and just letting the genie run loose on the population. Like, they're like, oh, well, it's out now. May as well let it ravage science and tell people what's right
Well,
and
that's
wrong.
what they're saying.
Even though
They're
it-
trying to harness it so that it doesn't
it
take
gets
over.
stuff wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Have you seen those Google AI
Yes.
summaries? It's wrong so often.
I won't hear a
there's no
bad word
way
about
I'm trusting
Gemini.
it.
Yeah.
Gemini, my best friend.
0, 1, 2.
And this is what they recovered using AI in the data set.
Thank God someone's working on this. I don't know what I'd do without it.
Tune into 4ZZZ, and the show is No Idea with me, Max. We've got Issy here.
Good morning.
We've got Gabe, and we've got our friendly neighbourhood marine scientist. Peter, what do you got for us?
All right, so a couple of weeks ago, I think, Gabe did a story about some sharing chimps. Gabe, do you want to give us a quick rundown of what that was?
Do you remember the alcoholic fruit
Yes.
that the chimps were
The cheap
sharing,
Dave.
the big African breadfruits, and there were just so many of these giant fruits dropping down that it was the first time they'd seen great apes that weren't humans sharing with no resource guiding. Like they just were happy to share. There was no hierarchy
And
stuff.
they called it feasting. That was the
Feasting,
key thing.
exactly,
It's
yeah.
a feasting behaviour. Well, not to be one-upped, the ocean now has some sharing friends-ish. So, researchers from the University of Hawaii, QS ranking points.
88.
Oh,
56.
yeah. 70?
Oh, you guys are really nice. It's 488. I think in marine science, they're very high.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really high in marine science, so take that with a grain of salt. An ocean of salt. They were out peacefully documenting the ocean when they saw something never seen before. A rare, peaceful scavenging event. So it had two shark species that almost never cross paths in the wild, oceanic whitetips and tiger sharks, both feeding on the same carcass. Now,
Big boys.
and the tiger shark's quite big boys. Oceanic whitetips are medium boys,
Okay.
I'd say. And they were feeding together without aggression. So this was on April 2024, sometime in April, and it was about 10 kilometres off the west coast of the Big Island in Hawaii. And they were watching this for over 8 hours, which they say is a very short amount of time, which it is for a whole study, but 8 hours straight just watching some sharks and other fish feeding on a carcass, I think is a pretty long time. Apparently they tried to go out again the next day to watch again, but they couldn't find the carcass. It had drifted off, so 8 hours is all they got. And they observed about 9 oceanic whitetips and 5 tiger sharks eating this carcass. Now, the carcass was decayed to mostly just flesh and blubber. From that, I'm assuming it is some sort of marine mammal, a large marine mammal
With the
at that.
amount of fat that's on
The
it.
amount of fat, the use of the word blubber.
Yep.
But they said the species of the carcass was unknown. They didn't know what it was at that point. It was just a bit of stuff floating through the ocean. Now, why is this unusual? Why don't these two species meet? So we're going to start with oceanic white-tip sharks. These are solitary, highly migratory, and they prefer the pelagic, meaning open ocean zone. They just go out sort of into the deep blue and see what they can find. Their average size is about 2 meters, so as I said, medium boys, and they're considered threatened and rarely observed in detail. Now, tiger sharks, we have a lot of these around here. They're coastal, so you'll see them around the coast. They're more generalist. They say generalist feeders. I would say eats anything that fits in their mouth.
Yeah.
Tiger sharks, for those who don't know, are well known within the marine science community for being interesting to cut open because you never know what you're going to find in their stomachs.
Oh my God.
They will just eat anything. One person, I don't know if I knew them personally, I heard a story of someone who had cut one open and found an entire fender from a car. Swallowed whole in this shark's stomach.
Hell yeah.
Incredible. A Toyota Fender. So their average size, as you can tell, is pretty large. It's about 4 meters. And they're better studied. They've got a coastal presence. They're very curious sharks. They'll interact with almost anything. So we know a bit more about tiger sharks. But these species rarely overlap in space or time because they have very different ecological niches. One's coastal, one's pelagic, one's big, one's small. They eat different things. They just don't tend to meet up. So that was one thing that really drew the researchers to this event, is they saw them both in the same place eating the same thing. But the key thing thing about this was that there was no aggression, no inter or intra-species aggression, meaning tiger sharks weren't fighting tiger sharks, oceanic whitetips weren't fighting oceanic whitetips, but more importantly, they weren't fighting each other. Absolutely no aggression.
Which is like a step above what we were talking about in that chimp study. That was just within the one social group of the one species.
Yeah,
they were
if someone
sharing.
else showed up, they may have been aggressive. This was like, they've got no idea who each other are. They're just random other things.
And are
coming
not a
in.
social species.
Not a social, no, at least one of them. Yeah, neither of them are really that social. Definitely not like a chimp.
Yeah.
Very different. However, when we say not social, it's a bit different because fish really do have complex social hierarchies, is how I would say it. They have strict social hierarchies, and we've seen this before within the species, but the researchers think that what happened here is that the sharks spontaneously created their social hierarchy to keep peace. They were like, we know our place, we're not going to fight it. So they had these sort of interesting feeding dynamics. So tiger sharks and the 2 largest whitetips had the most direct access to the carcass. The smaller sharks were remaining deeper in the water column, feeding on the scraps and regurgitated material, meaning stuff that the biggest sharks went with. And they think, so there was clear hierarchy in who could get near the carcass, who got near the carcass first, who couldn't, who had to swim slower, who had to swim deeper. And the researchers think that the dominance was mainly size related, so kind of fair. The bigger you were, the more you got access to the carcass. But remember that size related dominance, which we would usually say you're bigger because you're bigger, and so you get to be closer because if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to be way more aggressive because you're bigger. But there was no aggression. So there was no proof of concept of this, basically. Like, if you're thinking in a social hierarchy, the smaller ones didn't see the big ones being aggressive and be like, crap.
They didn't actually test each other out at all.
No, they didn't push those boundaries. They just went, you're bigger, off you go. Out. Go on, have a bite. And one really interesting thing was there was a female tiger shark that seemed to be hesitant to feed. Now, she was a bit smaller than the other tiger sharks. Sharks, generally, females are the larger ones, but she must have been younger or something. And so she was a bit smaller than the others. But she also arrived later. So the hierarchy had already been put in place. And the researchers think that she saw this hierarchy immediately and hesitated to know where she was going to fit in, then went and fed once she'd gotten her slot in the hierarchy.
Right.
That's what they think. The other really key thing here is between 2 to 3 divers were filming in the water throughout this event. The entire 8 hours.
Really?
And not
That's cool.
once in that 8 hours was there any threatening behaviour towards the humans.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Basically, this entire thing was everyone ignoring each other but sticking to rigid social hierarchies, which is really weird. It's just odd. Now, key to something I want to throw out here is our previous chimp story, this was described as co-feasting, but they did not describe it as sharing, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Sharing, the word wasn't really used, and that's similar.
They called it passive sharing, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In this, they did not. They did not say it was sharing. They didn't even use the word feasting, really. It was just ignoring others. It was just like there was a lack of aggression. That was the key thing. So I don't want to go as far as to say they were sharing the carcass. They were just sort of eating it together. So again, this is just about really interesting about how quickly fish have social hierarchies, how rigid their social hierarchies are, and how now we think they might even be interspecial without really communicating it in any way. Like, the communication would be aggression in this thing. Didn't happen. They just were kind of like, yeah, cool. So they want to keep looking for this and see if they can find it again. Because not only is it really interesting about fish social hierarchies, it's also interesting for showing people that sharks aren't just aggressive villains that are going to bite everything. Nah, you stick to their rules.
We're all good.
Just chill out. We're all good.
Okay, it's time for the best part of the show. Loosely defined as science, yeah, you already know. Everybody listens to 4ZZZ just to hear us talking about what Butters just did. Subscriptions just keep rolling like the tires on a car. But something tells me that our science curves won't go far. But unlike an engine, I won't keep you in suspension. We're all here to hear him talk, so let's give him attention. You're not ready for when he starts rapping. Gonna hand the mic to Max, and I'm not talking Van Stappen.
So we had a text in from Pete, and he says, I'm looking forward to your take on the F1 shenanigans. For the first time in 15 years or so, something genuinely interesting and newsworthy has happened. And everyone is in uproar about it and is demanding we never see anything like it again. We'll get into that soon. So F1 happened on the weekend, and it was the last of the triple headers. It was in Spain. They also saw some new regulations to do with the front wing to bring it in line with the previous rear wing mandate, or to stop the so-called mini DRS.
Yeah, basically these the wings, you can't have them completely rigid because under load at high speed they'll actually snap. So they've got to have a little bit of flex in them, but not so much that you get get to active aerodynamics.
Yes,
which is very much banned. So it's this sort of balancing act, I guess.
And the other teams are hoping that McLaren would be disadvantaged by this. Spoiler alert.
Hit it.
If anything, they've increased their gap. They really took it personally, that technical directive. I don't know.
So that's 5 times we played it this year.
Yes, sir.
Gabe thinks it's going to be 8 this year. Maxie said 9. Izzy said 10. And I said 12. So we're getting
halfway.
Needless to say, the McLarens were very impressive in free practice by setting the fastest times. And then our lad, Aussie Oscar Piastri, he set the pole time from teammate Lando. So it looked like it was McLaren's race to lose. Talk us through it, Maxie.
Well, it was a front row lockout, as we're saying. 2/10, though, the gap between Oscar and Lando. Especially after last weekend. I think that's a
was in the
really
hundreds.
good showing.
Yeah.
But, of course, Piastri, let it start to finish. Clinical. And unfortunately, Lando sort of got in a bit of a tussle with Max Verstappen, who was starting in P3 right off the bat. So, not really fighting his teammate so much as just trying to hold on to P2.
I think Max scares the crap out of Lando. And he just his fight or flight emotion comes, and he wants to fly.
He just gets these flashbacks to Austria.
Yeah.
Well. Do we want to get into the talking points?
Yeah, so we started these talking points 3 weeks ago. I thought we'd only use them for one show, but now it's sort of they morphed into all 3 races. And so let's talk about Argentinian Franco Colapinto and driving Jack Doohan's Alpine. He started in 18th and finished 15th. But how are we rating Colapinto at the moment?
Get Doohan back in, I reckon, at this point.
Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be equally as not performing as each other. So probably just about getting one of them consistent drive time between the Franco Colapinto who's in there now and the Aussie Jack Doohan.
Yeah. Now, George Russell, would he still be the dark horse? And yes, he was in Spain. He came home in 4th. So he usually finishes in the top 5. So I think he had an outlier last week, wasn't it, in Monaco?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it was a weekend to forget for Mercedes as a whole, I think.
Pretty well. Now, would Max Verstappen complain about his brakes? Well, he did.
Well, they didn't seem to work quite right. Did they?
Yeah, that's right. On one of the last laps, clearly. And he got a bit of a problem because he ended up in 10th after a few penalties were applied to him. What happened? What was the Max Verstappen saga? If you
Are we
will?
going to do it in the middle of the talking points, or do we want to?
Oh, okay. I'll keep going then. Fernando
Yeah, you
Alonso.
go, yeah.
Would he remain scoreless after 3 races, or how many? 9 races? And no, finally he's got 2 points. He came home in 9th, and finally would McLaren?
And it's his home race. Sorry, it's his home race.
It was.
Like, we should be playing the Spanish anthem. Like, what are we doing?
It's like he won it.
He may as well have.
Yeah. And then we got McLaren's Lando Norris. Would he secure pole on Saturday, which he didn't? And would he be listening to the Australian national anthem on Sunday, which he had to?
Yep.
So
Just sit through it.
let's do the Verstappen versus George Russell saga.
Well, this is the really controversial thing, and I think the problem is I've got an even more controversial opinion about it, which is that, I mean, I think the 10-second penalty is probably the maximum you'd give for something like that, an infringement like that. I had to... The sort of allegation is that Verstappen, because he intentionally, effectively threw his car at a competitor, he should have been disqualified. He's setting this really terrible example for children back home. Like Sky was doing the literal, like, would someone please think of the children talking points, which I thought was a little dramatic. But the last incident I can think of like this would have been the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Coincidentally, also was won by an Australian. But under safety car conditions, Vettel ran into the side of Lewis Hamilton intentionally after Vettel thought Hamilton checked him. And that didn't result in a black flag, but it did result in a 10-second stop-go and sort of a charge of dangerous driving. So the stewards in this case, however, have opted for the lesser infringement of causing a collision. The irony was that Verstappen was frustrated by a previous incident where car 1 was alleged, Verstappen's car, was alleged to have gained an advantage by going off the track. He was forced off by Russell. And the stewards have actually noted in their decision document that they weren't actually going to penalise him for that. So he didn't need to even give the place back in the first place.
But the team said to. So his engineer said to. And he knew that he didn't have to give it back. And that's probably, just his frustration was borne out. And so, I'm going to take it out on Russell.
Yeah, and I don't think, obviously, frustration is no excuse for road rage, right? But that's not what we're trying to say here. But do we think 10 seconds, is that more or less it? Or should he have been fully disqualified? Should we be taking this really hard line?
No. I'm just impressed at how well they know their cars. And he knew exactly how to hit George Russell without taking them both out. That's what I was impressed with.
Yeah, it's very targeted. Watching the footage of it was very almost intentional. Skillful, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Gabe?
Yeah, well, he got a 3-point driver penalty on his whatever the super license is, right? For Formula
So he's on 11
well.
now.
So he's on 11, and once they hit 12, they're banned from
1 weekend.
Yep.
1 race.
Yeah.
And then, do they have a point thing as well? Is there a point?
Not sure. No. There's no penalties. No.
You just got to sit out.
Sit out a whole weekend.
for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which is tough.
Which in Verstappen's case is, puts him out of championship contention, basically.
Yeah, it was really interesting seeing the discourse on the F1 subreddit about this as well, because people were saying, like, for some previous times where the driver has intentionally hit another driver, that is a full suspension. That is weekend's gone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, for some people, it's penalties. So it is really interesting discussing this kind of grey area where it is, Max Verstappen is the favourite for Formula One. Like, he is a fantastic driver. With a lot of money, yes, the golden child. So it's like sometimes you can see those little biases coming through as well. And especially of Max Verstappen, of all things, where he is quite an aggressive driver and quite a refined driver. It's really interesting seeing him in the naughty corner and seeing what the punishment is.
But this is like vintage Verstappen though. This is like proper 2016, 17, 18.
Don't
Verstappen.
muck with me.
Like you get a little glimpse of that like teenage boy coming through where you just kind of like jab Russell in the kidney and just kind of like keep going.
And to be fair, his father's not the best role model either.
No, and I think he's spoken about that quite a lot. So yeah, it is interesting that some media has gone with like think of the children. But yeah.
Now that he's a father.
Now he's a father,
Yeah, true. Okay.
But Toto Wolff had an interesting comment to make about it.
He did. He likened Max Verstappen's driving is similar to Rome's taxi drivers. And then the Rome taxi union thing came back and said, yes, that's because what happens is we drive at 30 miles per hour, which is as quick as our Mercedes will go.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Interesting Toto to be doing the shit stirring rather than Christian this weekend.
Very much so, yeah.
But yeah, and even Horner was declining interviews actually after the race.
Yeah.
Because of this,
Okay.
To be a fly on the wall in that meeting.
Exactly. Any more to add? It's a great race, though.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Like-
it's a great racetrack. Everything worked out.
Fantastic example of F1 at its
Yeah,
finest.
double stacking. The McLaren's double stacked.
Yep.
There was no delay. They still finished first and second with the Ferrari coming home third.
Yeah, nice.
With
Yeah.
Leclerc. He was
Where
surprised.
did he come from?
Yeah. He's the new dark horse, isn't
Yeah, finally.
Maybe.
he? Yeah. Gabe, you watch it?
Yep, sure did. Nothing more to add though.
Yeah.
We've crushed it.
Okay. We'll go into
Cool.
NASCAR.
What else happened?
Not much.
Yeah, NASCAR.
No, NASCAR. Latest race happened in Nashville Super Speedway. And get this, Taylor Swift
Of course.
was waving the checkered flag while singing, "Look What You Made Me Do." I'm only joking. I'm only joking out there. Former three-time supercar champion Shane Van Gisbergen finished 25th. Not good, but not bad. He was competing against 38 other drivers. MotoGP, it's in Spain this weekend, but more importantly, 5-time world champion Mick Doohan's. It's his birthday today.
Oh, wow.
So happy 60th.
Gemini season.
Gemini. And finally, it's got Sail GP. It also happening this weekend off New York. They're going to be featuring the newly strengthened sail wings, which famously broke on the Australian boat. And so they had to halt the season to build new wings, which meant the inaugural Brazilian race was shaved off the calendar. There is some scuttlebutt that the Team Australia, who is actually still leading the championship, by the way, the crew may have been emotionally scarred by the collapsing mast.
Yep.
So it may take a couple of fleet races to restore their confidence in their F50 catamaran. And you can see this with the New Zealand team, because the New Zealand team also suffered a similar fate to their wing and sail wing, and they were off the pace for a lot of races coming back from when their boat was repaired.
I mean, you got to have faith in your equipment, don't you? To be able to perform at like such a high level.
Correct, yeah. Because they could it's potentially fatal if that hits you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, at least they got nice cockpits which they can duck down. So hopefully it's a bit like the halo on the F1 cars. Maybe they'll have to have halos. on the F50s.
And it would look silly for a few seasons.
And then everyone would complain, and then they'll have a major incident, and everyone's like, "Oh, thank God, we have it."
Okay, F1 and the return of F1 Academy in Montreal, in Canada, on the 15th of June. That would be a good race to watch. That's a great racetrack as well.
It is.
Yeah.
And you got the wall.
What is like a pseudo street circuit as well, right? Kind of like Melbourne.
Is it? Yeah. And what do they call that last bit where the corner where they hit the wall?
The Wall of Champions.
The Wall of Champions. Nice.
Which has named basically every single F1 champion at some point has crashed into that under qualifying conditions or race conditions.
Cool.
Nice.
Absolute race. As you say, rite of passage.
Yeah. You all happy, Gabe?
Happy. Next MotoGP is this weekend, Sunday, 10 p.m. And then the Formula One is in 2 weekends' time.
Nice.
Beautiful.
As toddlers, we all learned our sounds, right? Gabe, what does a cat say?
Yeah.
Max, what does a chicken say?
Cluck, cluck.
And Izzy, what does a shark say?
I'm coming to get you.
Yeah.
What does the fox say?
You tune into 4ZZZ. The show is No Idea. Your weekly dose of science with me, Max, Peta, Issy. What do you got for us, Gabe?
I've got for you, Max, this Mount Etna eruption over in Italy. And just a bit of a shallow dive into the science. A shallow dive into volcano science.
Peter's mic's not on, by the way.
Peter's being silenced. Justice for Peter.
Silence.
Yeah.
She
Silence or silence?
MotoRap.
I did silence myself for the MotoRap. Now I'm back.
Now, on Monday, a huge cloud of ash, hot gas, and rock fragments spewed up out of the Mount Etna in Italy, which is a known active volcano.
Where is Mount Etna?
In Italy.
No, thanks. That's great. That really clears it up.
I can't place it for you within Italy.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume up towards the Alps, so probably northern Italy.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, fair.
And so I'm sure you've seen clips. It was all over the news. It was all over socials. Massive plume with people running down because it's an active tourist hotspot.
Yes,
Yeah,
I got
active volcano, active hotspot.
I got so much footage of this, not only on Instagram but also on Reddit and just in like news feeds as well. So I saw this eruption in every single angle.
Oh yeah,
as people in GoPros,
Within the
people with
volcano.
phones. Yeah. Just people running down this like
What I will
active
say-
volcano.
Yeah, there was a lot of people like walking towards it to try and get a better shot, and people just standing around when they should have been getting out of it.
Run.
Which you know, I'm like, okay, this is standard humans being dumb humans. We are just apes. We're doing stupid stuff. I will say though, the ability of humanity to run away from an active volcano while filming smoothly has gotten real
So
good.
funny.
Hats off, everyone. I don't know if we've been
stabilization
training or if the stabilization's just gotten real good on the
Fully.
latest phones.
Hi guys, I'm running for my life right now.
No,
Let's check in.
Fully,
But the people fully legging it down the side of a mountain, holding the phone out next to them, not looking at what they're
360
filming,
cam?
but just crushing the
No,
filming.
fully. People GoPros with a 360 cam, and it's like they're actively running, arms up, running for their life, and it's so stable. And I was like, damn, is it bad that I'm a nerd? I'm like, this is impressive.
I can't even take a good photo of like a single stationary person. These people have got the volcano bang on center. The videography is great. So hats off to all the camera people out there.
Maybe next time, focus on running for your life.
If you could do it while legging it down the mountain, go for it. I reckon
but not
that's
like
allowed.
the cheese wheel guy.
But then they'd run past someone. They'd run past someone who's just standing there filming. And you're like, okay, this you
No,
need
you
to
gotta
just
move.
run. You're not
if
allowed to take the
people are running
photo.
around you, there's ash falling from the sky. Fun fact, it's time to move.
So several kilometers, this stuff spewed up into the sky. Lava was flowing down the mountains in multiple locations or through multiple channels. And no injuries have been confirmed from what I can see in reports.
Grazing from
Minimal
falling down
flight
a mountain.
disruptions.
Minimal flight disruptions, really? Wow. That's
But they
cool.
say no injuries, no serious injuries. I'm sure some
Right.
people scraped themselves
Yeah.
falling over as they ran, and that sort of thing. And authorities have, of course, warned people to be very careful about checking warnings before they go climbing an active volcano. They say you can't really fence it off. It's a mountain. But
It's also a giant pit with magma. Yeah, difficult.
So you just have to sort of advise people to be careful as you can. As I said, it's active volcano known to erupt. It's had, if you look at the Smithsonian institution has a tracker for volcanoes, active volcanoes, and so this has been continuing since 2022. This string of eruptions.
I would categorize
before
this
that.
as very active. I think it's important to, because active volcanoes, I used to live in what was technically called an active volcano, and it hadn't blown up in thousands of years. So there's a
What, Rotorua?
2,000 years, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't in Rotorua. No, it was in Auckland. But it's like there's a difference between technically active and like. No, it's active. It's going.
Yeah.
She's currently going.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big difference.
Its latest eruptions were April 7 to May of last year to May 2nd of this year, and it's still continuing. So, it's just very frequently erupting. But this is bigger than what we've seen. That's why it's made the news and why it triggers people stampeding down the mountain. And what it's categorized. Did you know there is something called the Volcanic Explosivity Index?
Nice.
Yes, I did actually.
Which you use to categorize eruptions of volcanoes.
Yeah.
It goes up to the very top. Hang on, let me pull up the actual wording for you. Is a V8 plus, a VEI 8 plus, sorry.
Yeah.
So VEI 0 to VEI 8 plus.
Right.
And at 8 plus, it's
Is
a
extreme.
massive, I mean, it's over 10 to the power of 12 volume of stuff ejected out.
Oh, wow.
Column heights that are like VEI 5 is over 25 kilometer high column.
Really?
So VEI 8 plus
Which is space.
just way over 25.
No, they do.
Yeah.
They genuinely do get space, Max. It's huge.
Okay.
So it goes up to a really high, but there's also some colloquial names that go along with those categories that are a little less scientific
Big.
than VEI 1, 2, and 3.
Ah!
So
Run.
Mount Etna is thought of as Strombolian eruptions. That's what
Yes,
they
and I
kind of-
believe it's because it's a stratovolcano, right?
Well, no, that's just because that's what it typically erupts at. That's the
but-
explosivity is because that's its typical. That's how it erupts, and it's named after a nearby active volcano called Stromboli. So it's a Stromboli, and they say though that this one. There's a good write-up in the conversation if you want to look at it. And Professor Teresa Ubidi, who's wrote that up, said this was probably a crossover between Stromboli and the next category up, which is Volcanian. So a bit bigger.
Good, that one.
Because it had,
It's very loose.
Vulcan. Yeah.
It is a stratovolcano.
not VOL. Yeah.
Because stratovolcanoes, there's like a couple of different types of volcanoes. Stratovolcanoes are the ones you think of. They're the pointy triangular ones, and Italy has a couple of these, and they're the one they like make the big booms. These big ones that Gabe's talking about, the volcanic eruptions, are usually from stratovolcanoes. Mount Etna is the most active stratovolcano in the world.
Who says that?
UNESCO.
Oh, there you go.
AI.
So what happened? Typically in Strombolian eruptions that it usually has, we're talking tens or hundreds of meters of rocks and cinder getting thrown. But yesterday's we saw was more explosive than that. Some of the stuff, the ash and the hot gas was going kilometers, so that's why it's probably a bit bigger than usual, or classified as a bit bigger than usual. And it began with an increase of pressure in hot gases inside the volcano, like Peter was saying, led to the partial collapse of part of one of the craters on its top, and then that spewed out, and it allowed what's called a pyroclastic flow, which is a fast
there was a pyroclastic flow.
Yeah, a fast-moving cloud of ash, hot gas, and fragments of rock bursting out. So that's the bit of the volcano that we think of when we think of volcano. The flow upwards out from
you don't want to touch
of
that.
pressure.
No.
It can also come down. So this is what happened in Pompeii. It was a huge pyroclastic flow. Pyroclastic, it means literally like the ash and the bits of stuff become almost a liquid. Like it's so thick, it's a liquid, it's high pressure, it's intense. And so that's why when you find the people of Pompeii, they say there was cement in their lungs. And that's because it was liquid ash that they were breathing it in.
Yeah.
And when they say, like, it's called a flow for a reason. It flows down the mountain in huge events. Obviously, this wasn't that big. This probably fell as ash, I imagine, once it got to actual, like, where people were living. And because the tourists were able to get away. But in really huge ones like Pompeii, that's why it's deadly, it's a huge pyroclastic flow. Fun fact, Brisbane actually had a pyroclastic flow millions and millions of years ago, and you can see the deposit of it all the way down the coast when the Great Dividing Range was active, because fun fact, they were active at some point in time. It was just a really long time ago. There was a pyroclastic flow there, and we can see the remnants of it because it sits in the lithographic record. So it's really cool. But yeah, I will say, so when we talk about volcano types, Mount Etna being this active is interesting because stratovolcanoes aren't really known to be like frequent. The reason they have such huge explosions is because they build up over time.
The pressure.
And then they get high pressure and then they release. So releasing it so often and still having these really big explosions is super interesting because it's different. Like shield volcanoes, which is the type of volcano I used to live in, they are more known, like the ones in Hawaii, where they're constantly bubbling and constantly growing. That's like a slow-moving volcano. They don't tend to have huge eruptions like these ones in Italy that do. Have massive eruptions with huge pressure, gas and pyroclastic flows and very dramatic volcanoes.
Yes. So just for context, the Pompeii eruption, which was Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE or AD, was classified as a VEI 6.
Really?
Oh, wow.
0 to
Okay.
A+.
It was massive.
So that's big, but that's a 6. And what we were talking about today hasn't been classified, probably a 2. Around there,
if that,
and then 8+. I mean, we must be talking like catastrophic levels.
Oh,
of
huge! There was one in the
changing
middle of the
Earth's
Pacific.
atmosphere for years.
Pretty well.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. There's a very famous volcanic eruption. For some reason, I forgot the name now, but it was literally heard all throughout the Pacific, and that was massive. Huge. Sorry, volcanoes are like one of the things I'm really interested in. I find them really fun and interesting, but not when you're in them and running for your life, obviously.
But get good footage.
Get good footage if you can. Safely, please.
Yes,
safely.
No, it's super interesting reading. It's based in Sicily, is where the mountain is.
Okay, cool.
In both Roman and Greek mythology, Vulcan, the god of blacksmithing, it's believed his forge is under this volcano, like this mountain.
Yeah.
So it's super
from
interesting.
Greece, by the way.
Yes, in both Greek, and Roman mythology. It's really
Romans.
interesting. Yeah.
They were like, yeah, that's interesting, but I reckon it's our volcano, actually.
Yes.
3 physicists at the Technical University of Denmark, they have ranked the types of paper that are most likely to cause a paper cut.
Oh, shut up. Really?
Yeah.
You tune into 4ZZZ and the show is No Idea with me, Max, Peter, Gabe. What do you got for us, Issy?
Well, I was going to do the story, and then I got a little spoiled by Zed Lines, but it's been over 40 minutes, so hopefully everyone's forgotten what they were talking about. Because I'm talking, this is fresh off the press, dropped 4th of June. So I'm going to talk about these cockatoos who have been observed drinking from water fountains. There's a great little video that's supplied with this story, which is just what you would imagine sulfur-crested cockatoos drinking from a water fountain in Western Sydney. Being a little cheeky. I wanted to talk about this article because the abstract is fantastic because it reference, I think we've discussed this, the bin, this is from
the bin opening
exact
ones.
words.
We have talked about this.
Bin opening innovation is the exact words that they use in sulfur-crested cockatoos, where they would open household bins to access food waste, with this behaviour spreading across southern Sydney.
Yeah, so this is the same research group, I'm assuming, who are still looking at them, because this was a thing where there was like phase 1 was they realized cockatoos learnt to open bins, some of them, and then taught it to others, and then others learnt just to be near the ones that can open the bins.
Yes.
And then they then documented people trying to stop them, and this arms war, they called it, between the cockatoos and the residents.
Which, from memory, the cockatoos won.
The cockatoos were winning because you have to keep your bin closed in a way that the garbo can quickly undo.
Yes. Yeah, but there was like a video of someone had put 2 bricks on their bin. Thinking like, they can't pick that up. Cockatoo just pushed it off. They were like, I understand gravity. Like, I don't care. Why someone put these bricks here?
So what's happened now?
So what they have observed, this is crazy. We've got QS rankings coming in for this one. The University of Western Sydney, QS ranking.
That'd be 110.
142.
200?
Oh, 384, so closest Gabe.
Okay.
The Australian National University, hopefully we get this one right.
20.
32?
22.
Close, 30. And
Gabe got
a
it.
wild card, University of Vienna, Austria.
Oh, we've done this before.
Oh, wait, we
80.
had this recently.
88 or something.
83?
I'm going
74.
No, 137, guys. What are we on about?
We've had this multiple times.
Like the last 3 weeks, the University of Vienna has been feeding us.
Yes, and I believe the University...
Next week, I want to see a chart on your wall with all the QS rankings.
You need to order one of those posters that have them all on. But I think it was due to funding, like the Swiss... there was a lot of funding coming into this research, so I think that's where the University of Vienna, Austria comes in. But... They found that they observed a population of these... Sorry, I'm just reading through this article. They set up camera traps for sulfur-crested cockatoos in Western Sydney, and they observed them for 44 days, which revealed 525 attempts at opening a water fountain, a twist-handle public drinking fountain.
Twist handle. So I was going to ask you this, what type it is, right? Because we've all seen birds feeding off a leaking water fountain.
Yes.
Or drinking,
Bubblers,
sorry.
Just general bubblers.
Yeah. So
they are the ones we've got. I'm going to do a physical movement. It's the twist side ones, like the ones that you turn. So it's like a little knob on it.
Yeah.
But it's not like a
so it's got a tap
handle
on it.
twist. It's like one of those ones where it's almost like a lever.
Oh yeah, it's got a spring action.
No, it's the general, like the 4-prong twist.
The 4-prong
twist knobs.
Okay.
So it's not a pressurized one. It's not a lever. It's the 4-prong twist.
I was underestimating them.
It is a tap.
Do they turn
it's essentially. No, these bastards.
Why do they keep leaving this thing on, guys? Leave it on.
So they observed this. So they were aware of this behavior over at least 2 years. They had been aware that these animals were doing this. Successful operation required a coordinated sequence of activities with, and I think the Z-line has touched on this, only 41% of observed attempts ended in success.
Right.
So
that's going to go up, though.
That's still trying. It is going to go up.
Still trying. To be fair, it's very dry in Western Sydney. So
yes.
They're just like finding water.
They observed that birds were visiting at dawn and dusk with expectations for use of a water resource. So it wasn't surprising they weren't just kind of like free for all. It was expected
It
behavior.
wasn't for fun. They were
It
like,
wasn't
"I
just for
want
fun.
water
They weren't
now."
just like they weren't feasting or anything
No,
like that on this water
Feasting
fountain.
on water.
On fermented fruit.
Yes,
Yeah.
but this is such an interesting article because it has specific maps of the water fountains in the specific park. So it's a location of 10 drinking fountains observed in the local area. And they noted that some of them were more used by cockatoos, and it was indicated by chew marks on the rubber top of the bubbler that
my
they were
God.
using.
That's incredible.
Oh, they're doing the
They're
full
putting their
mouth
mouth
over
over
it.
They're putting no fully.
No bubbler etiquette.
No, fully. They were
Someone's gotta
being
teach
that
them.
weird kid that would put their whole mouth on
Yes,
the bubbler, and you
yes.
just be like, ew.
Gross. Someone's got to give them a stern talking to and
A
then
stern-
teach them how to
Some
use it.
signage
Yes.
would be good.
So-
I think if we made cockatoo-friendly bubblers,
yes.
allowed them
There
to
you
drink
go.
So you-
naturally, we could share.
At least in Brisbane, where you have like the dog
Yeah,
bowls at
down
the bottom
below.
of them,
Yeah.
having some sort of being able not having them learn how to use a bubbler, but instead having an open source of water that might be easier. But yes,
I've seen them go away from those, though.
yeah.
I've seen birds look at those, see a dog drink from it, and then went,
Nah.
no.
So I see where the hierarchy is.
Yeah.
It's dogs and then cockatoos and then humans.
Maybe
for the
we should make them
whatever.
super tall so the birds only use the top rung.
Oh yeah,
And then
so they're no
and
longer
the humans
biting on
use the middle and the dogs use the
I
bottom
can't
one.
use the bubbler.
So it is interesting. They observed that this behavior was only seen in the specific park. It has not yet spread, and they pointed it out that this is in contrast to the previous study about bin opening, which spread from 3 suburbs to 44 suburbs in several years, and it's still being reported on, by the way. So they considered that yes, wheeled household bins are very common, but water fountains not so much in suburbs. So this may be something that we only observe in parks.
Yeah.
Additionally, they said that there is a lack of data on different bubblers as well. So they
wanna see
found
the
that
bubblers.
the horizontal tray with the push button, which is when I think of a bubbler,
Common.
normally what I think of,
Yeah.
they haven't seen that type of behavior spread yet. So maybe
Not quite
this
heavy
is
enough to press the button, are they?
yeah, I would imagine like 2 or 3 maybe pushing down whilst
Yeah.
one drinks, but
Maybe,
I don't
yeah.
know. So we're not
But
going to
how
see
do they,
that.
How did they spin the taps?
I'm looking at
That's
there is
hard
like
for me sometimes.
there's like a supplementary video, and it is one of them having their claw down and pushing on a prong and then drinking from the bubbler. So it is quite
so maybe
interesting.
They're just quite light taps.
Yeah, so I found at least growing up in primary school, it would just be very sensitive, and some of them you would have to push a little more. But I think it is just like if you provide a little bit of weight, it will create
And it
quite a
could
lot
be-
of water.
They could be dealing with the springed pronged ones. You know,
Yes.
like what I think we might be thinking of. You know, you
I was
come
thinking of an
across a
actual
tap,
tap,
and
yeah.
it's like been rusted in, and
Yeah.
you're trying to force it out with the gold
Yeah, I can't
prongs.
do those, they're
It's
hard.
probably one of those more like recent silver prongs that you open up
One of those
and
nice
and it
new
flicks
bubblers.
back.
Yes.
shiny
Yeah.
new thing, and it flicks back.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm sure in the article it does say the specific type of bubbler. I'm sure. Sorry, I don't have the scientific word
The
for this
formal
one.
name for the
formal
bubbler.
name for the bubbler. But it is that kind of 4-pronged typical you'd see in like a
Model
primary school.
X4V.
Yes.
That's right.
So they are just pushing
Built in
down
Vienna.
and drinking from
Yeah.
it. So that's keep an eye out. I know they also referenced a specific, I think it's the Big City Birds application. Yeah, Big City Birds application that people are using to report the wheelie bin incidents.
Oh, okay.
So we may
So it's
see
like
an
Frog
increase.
ID, but for
It is like
birds.
iNaturalist, but for birds. So
Yes, yet again, we do need to point people back to iNaturalist. This show has a formal position
Yes.
of no more apps,
Yep.
and we're going to maintain that position. Yet again, please just report things through iNaturalist
Naturalist.
or call your local scientist.
So
Like if you see a cockatoo playing with a bubbler or a bin, you're allowed to.
You
use
can,
it.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I
that's
think
an extreme circumstance.
that's when you have to get the University of Vienna on the line and go, babes, I have something for you.
You won't believe what I've seen.
But don't worry. It's only the Sydney birds. Our Brisbane cockatoos, our bin chickens won't be doing that
Well-behaved.
anytime soon.
Cool. We'll get
Oh,
back into
imagine the
playlist.
bin chickens got involved.
Wait until they hear about dumpster diving babes.
These New World monkeys can do 3 musical octaves. Now, I'm going to play you the call again so you can listen to the flipping around the frequencies. And now I want to play you the sound that the researchers so generously provided of the slowed down version of this monkey yodeling so you can really
great.
hear the differences of the switch between. You want to hear this?
It's just you getting up in the morning, go.
Wrong button.
You tune into 4ZZZ, and this show is No Idea, but not for much longer. Sign us out, Gabe.
That is all we have time for on the show. We'll be back on your airwaves 10 a.m. next Wednesday, 102.1 FM on the 4ZZZ website, on the Community Radio Plus app. Between now and then, keep an eye out for sharks sharing a meal, attractive male alpine frogs infected with deadly fungus, aggro world champion F1 drivers, and sulfur-crested cockatoos that have a bit too much time to do experimenting with new behaviours like bubble use, bin opening, and all this other
Bubblers,
cheeky
bin
stuff.
opens, and other
What are they up to
bee-related
next?
instigators.
If you want to listen back to all of those stories, shows on 4ZZZ.org.au, the full thing, or you can listen to a cut-down version as a podcast wherever you get your podcasting from. Look up No Idea, No with a K, 4ZZZ, and you'll find us pop up there.
And we'll speak to you next week.
See ya.
I'm a goddamn marvel of modern science.